So this here is a video on how to paint the VenomCrawler from the new ShadowSpear set. And as you can see, we've got the ShadowSpear set right here. And we just finished him. And I think he looks fantastic. If you're interested in how we got here, then please feel free to stay tuned. And what we came to the very quick realization is that we can't do the underside of this model without removing it from the base. There's just no way it's going to happen. So we cut it, is that we can't do the underside of this model without removing it from the base. There's just no way it's going to happen. So we cut it free so we have access to the underside, because it's just, there's too much detail down there and you can't get to it coming from this angle here. So we've removed it. If you haven't glued it already, don't glue it to the base until we've finished painting it. All right, so that's an interesting last-minute discovery we just made. All right, so today we're going to paint the VenomCrawler from the new ShadowSpear set. So he just released today, and I just put him together. So this is the raw model, and what we're going to do is first prime him with Chaos Black spray. And make sure we get it all over, because the model is majority black. It's a fast and sleazy way to get started. So now our VenomCrawler is primed Chaos Black, and what we're going to do now is actually start the painting session. So there's a lot going on with this model. What we're going to do is we're going to start with all the fleshy bits. We're going to start with a base of rack-art flesh, and what we're going to do is all of the bits that tend to be fleshy. So most of that's on the back of the model. It tends to be this area here. So we've got our rack-art flesh layer finished. So the next layer we're going to do is actually Screaming Skull. And we're going to put a Screaming Skull dry brush over all of the rack-art flesh that we've got there now. So we're going to take that little bit of Screaming Skull. We're just going to highlight some of this area here, like so. So we want something like that. Our next step in the fleshy skin is to take Carlsberg Crimson Shade, and what we're going to do is just shade in all of the areas we just did, making it all nice and fleshy. Pushing it into the corners if we can. Don't worry about making a mess. This is why we're doing this layer first. I'll just leave that to dry for now. So that we finished with those colors, we're going to take a little bit of Pallid Witch Flesh and just go over the high points. So now we finished with our flayed skin, and we've used those 4 paints there. What we're going to do now is move on to the little mouth that's here, as well as the tentacle that comes out of there, both of which are going to get a base coat of Bugman's Glow. So following the Bugman's Glow, we're also going to shade that same as before with Carlsberg Crimson. Then we're going to take a dry brush of Pink Horror and highlight that tentacle. And with that, we're now ready to start our metallics. So the first one we're going to do is Retributor Armor, which is the base of the gold all over the model. We're going to get a very fine detail brush and start doing all of the gold all over this model. So this is the completed piece now that all of the Retributor Armor gold is done. So as you can see, we've done a lot of trim, and this took way longer than I was expecting. So we did the front panels here. Don't worry if you've gone over, we're going to go over all that with black. We've done the trim parts here where they blended in with the fleshy bits. We've done the underneath the trim here keeping the edge line, and we've done the front piece again. We've done the cross on this arm, the top plate on that one, both spike tops. The eyes are done in gold, and there is a little bit of a round trim here along the edge of them right there that we also did because we're going to need that later. And then we did the exhaust vents here. We did the spikes on the bottom, tips of the whiptails. So that was quite a bit of work to get around. Like I said, if you go outside the lines like we did here and on this panel, it doesn't matter because we're going to clean that up after. For the most part, we wanted to get as much down as we could. And now what we're going to do from there, so now what we're going to do is shade our Retributor Armor with Agrax Earthshade, and we're going to just completely coat it. Get as much detail as we can in there. So something like that, I think. So we'll wait for all of that to dry. So while we're waiting for the shade to completely dry, we're going to switch over and start doing the silver metal. So we're going to start with a base of lead belcher here. And we're going to do all of the metal parts, the silverish metal parts that we're going to do on this. So these are going to include this claw, all of these round vents that are here, one there, one there, the gears all inside of here, the pulleys, several of the cables that are going through here. We're going to do a couple of the exhaust pipes. We're going to do the back spine here, a few more of the buried wires there, the barrel of the gun so we can do the gold on the end, the chain strapped through the spikes on the back, and then the whip coils as well in the front, and the other talon over here. So those are all going to get done right now with lead belcher. And we're using a very, very watered down color because we have a lot to do and we don't want to overdo the detail. We also don't want to go over the gold as we're leaving it dry. But there's definitely a lot to do on this model. So we've got all of the silver finished, the lead belcher. As you can see, we did pretty much what we had said. The inside of that claw, the warp talon, the whiplash coils, the other claw, most of the machinery down and underneath, as you can see here, and then the exhaust pipes coming up, two of the end pieces which we're going to wash in a different color after, the shaft of the gun, which we then did the gold on the end, the vents, and then several of the wires on the inside. This leaves a mess of wires underneath all along here. Now each of these wires have little holes in them where the metal shines through. So we're going to want to do those with lead belcher, but the sheathing itself, I think what we're going to do is make most of those screamer pink. And then we'll do the lead belcher little openings afterwards. So all of these wires here, so we've got our screamer pink cabling done. We've also taken the time to add a little bit of the iron breaker in the bare spots, because as they're falling apart, you get to see the wires through them. What we're going to do is shade with Newlin oil everything that we did with the lead belcher and everything we did with screamer pink, with the exception of these two exhaust ports here, which we're going to come around and do later. So we'll just take our Newlin oil and we'll start shading like that, just to bring out the details there. All the whip coils. So we are now finished with all of the shading for our VenomCrawler. And what we're going to do is start bringing the color back with some highlights. So the first one we're going to do is come at the gold, which we used Retributor Armor and Agrax Earthshade already. We're going to add a layer of Liberator Gold, and that's going to bring that gold color right back out again. A little bit brighter than before, see? Once again, don't worry if you make too much of a mess on the black. We haven't come back to clean up the black. That is going to be our last step. But the less mess you make, the less you have to clean up after. So that's more of the color we're going to go with. We're going to finish up the whole model and we'll meet back here afterwards. So we've got our Liberator Gold layer finished, and as we dry brushed, of course, we went on to the black carapace, which is fine, but we do have the two-tone effect of the gold and its undercoat, so that looks really, really nice, and it'll look a bit nicer when we clean it up. Moving on to the silver, which we have lead belcher followed by Newland oil. What we're going to do now is we're going to add a thin layer of Ironbrigger, and what we're going to do there is just dry brush on over most of the silver parts, the back here and things like that, the rib cage in the back here, the spine, the mechanicals underneath, but mostly the arms and these two big claws here, and the warped and whip tendrils. So that's what we're going to do here, just to clean up all that stuff. There's also a chain dangling in the back here. We'll hit that as well. So we'll do those with some dry brushing, trying to light that back up. So what we're going to do is the rest of the metallics in here, and then we'll come back and meet us again in a few minutes. So now that both our gold and steel have been highlighted and shined up, we're going to do the last exhaust ports that we hadn't done yet, which are these little ones here and this one over here. And what we're doing with those is we're going to make them brass. So Balthasar gold is our base on that. And with our fine detail brush, we're going to light those up too. So give that a few minutes to dry. So now, while we're relighting things back up, we're going to take Screamer Pink again and just light back up all the cabling that we had Newland oiled already. Something like that. So we'll do the other ones just to get it all caught up. So now that we've got that finished, we're going to do a highlight on those two exhaust vents, the silver one we never touched and the brass one we just made. We're going to use Reclin Flesh Shade for both. We're going to do a nice shade on both areas there. While we're waiting for that last shade to dry, we may as well work on the terrain that the legs are on. We're going to take a little bit of Eshin Gray. We're just going to paint up the whole stone that spider here, VenomCrawler, is standing on. Now while we're waiting for the stones to dry, we're going to take a little tiny bit of Mephiston Red and just do the tassel that's hanging from this chain right here. And now what we're going to do is, while we're still working on the chain on the upper part of the carapace, we're going to take a little bit of this Screaming Skull and just do the skull that is up here. Now that our skull is finished and dried, we're going to take a little bit of the Agrax Earth Shade again, and we're just going to shade that skull to bring out some of its details there. Continuing our terrain, we're going to take a little bit of Dawnstone and brush it over the Eshin gray that we had down there originally. Continuing into terrain, we're going to take a little bit of Balthasar Gold, and we're going to do the little pillars that are there. As well as this piece of rebar here. There's another one on the other side, right here. And there's a window in the center here. We're also going to take a little bit of Retributor armor again. And we're going to do most of the Aguila that's here on the ground. Like so. Finally, we're going to wash that terrain piece with a little bit of Agrax Earthshade there. For one more shade, we're going to take a tiny bit of Carlsberg Crimson and just wash the standard that we did in Mephiston Red there, the tassel. Finally, after all of this, and every other coat and every other wash, we're going to do our most important one, which is the Abaddon Black. And we're going to fill in all of the carapace where we've wandered over with all the other colors. We use a very fine detail brush, get in tight with all these lines, and we're going to use a well watered down paint just to make sure we don't leave any marks at all. So we'll do that and we'll be right back. So we're finished with the black, and it's turned out really, really nice. What we're going to do now is, with a little bit of Screaming Skull, we're going to clean up the teeth, as well as the teeth in where the tentacle comes from here, and the teeth in this pit. Now we're going to do one more highlight of Pink Horror over that side tentacle there, because it has faded over the last few layers that we've done. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take our Troll Slayer Orange, or any other bright orange we have. We're going to start doing the eyes of the model. So we've re-glued this back to the base so that it is now permanently mounted. And the only thing we have left to do now with our very fine detail brush, we're going to take the technical Spirit Stone Red, which we usually use to put over gems. But in this case, what we're going to do with it is we're just going to put a tiny little bit of it over the eyes. Like so. So what we're going to do is now we're going to base the bottom with some sand, and then we'll clear coat it. And here you can see the finished model. As you can see, we've based it with sand, and then I've clear coated it. I also took the time to put a little bit of Ard coat on the tongue, which makes it just a tiny bit glossy. But that is pretty much the finished piece right there. If you like what we did and you found the video helpful, please feel free to like the video or even subscribe to the channel. And I will try to have more videos out for more of the ShadowSpear set.